Hey guys, welcome to 3 Mississippi. Sid here. Thanks for clicking on the video. We are getting close to cold and flu season here, with us quickly getting into fall and winter. And I just harvested a bunch of my elderberries a few weeks ago, and I've been storing them in the freezer because I had batches come ready at different times. Well, they're all ready and I finally have the time to make my elderberry syrup. So we are going to go through that and show you how we make that today. I'm also going to give you an update on what's going on in the shop build, because some progress has been made. Let's get after it. We're gonna go ahead and get these elderberries started, and then we'll go show you the progress in the shop. But since these have to cook for a while, I figure might as well get these started first. So I've harvested all my elderberries, and as you can see, I've let them sit on the counter to defrost here. There are still some stems, things like that in here, because that is all going to come out later. Now granted, most of the stems are out, and I have washed these thoroughly, made sure there were no bugs on them, anything like that. Now, the nice thing about these is when you harvest them, as I mentioned, you can stick them in the freezer. Oftentimes, not all your plants are ready at one time. And sometimes I like to make separate batches, so I'll leave some in the freezer, and then if I have a lot left from my harvest, usually I'm harvesting in July, beginning of August, somewhere in there. If I have more than just enough to do one batch, I'll keep my berries in the freezer and wait until a little bit further into cold and flu season and make a fresh batch at that time. Because when you make this, it is only good for 6 months in the refrigerator. Now you can this, however, once you open it, you're still subject to the terms of the refrigerator, number one, and number two, one of the ingredients that I like to put into my elderberry syrup is local raw honey. Now, if you cook that into the syrup, you're going to lose all of the health benefits of that wonderful raw honey. So to me, I prefer to just keep it in their fridge for 6 months versus putting it through the cooking process. Now, I do know some people will not add the honey until after they've canned it and made it shelf stable, and then when they go to use it, they will then add the honey. However, to really properly mix in the honey, the liquid needs to be warm, so just keep that in mind. The first thing I'm going to do is dump all of my elderberries in here. I did not have a particularly large harvest this year. The birds were ruthless. They went after my berries. They do love them. Now, birds and most animals can eat elderberries raw. We cannot. There is no taste testing or sampling that is going to be done until these are fully cooked. A funny little thing about elderberries is that they do have a toxin. I'm not going to bore you with the science of it, but basically, if you eat it raw, it will make you sick. If you cook it really well, you will be fine and you will have all the health benefits of it. That's the bottom line. That's really all most of us need to know. So don't be plucking berries off your tree and eating it. And don't be thinking you can just juice these and drink the juice. You can't. They have to be cooked. Now that we've established that, you can see I've got a nice full pot here of my elderberries. I'm going to put enough water in this pot just to cover the berries to get it started. Now, normally for my recipe, I do like to add fresh ginger. However, I wasn't able to get my hands on any in time to make this. So I'm not going to be adding any ginger to it. I have tried in the past to use store-bought dried ginger. I did not like the flavor that it added to it, and I don't think it really helped with any health benefits. So we are not going to be worrying about that today. We are simply going to omit the ginger, but if you can get your hands on some fresh ginger, for a pot this size, I would say I would probably put about a teaspoon and a half of freshly grated ginger in here. Now I'm going to be adding some cloves, some whole cloves. This helps with the flavor. And remember, I'm basically throwing sticks in, right, of these cloves, but that's okay because all of this is going to go through a sieve. So I will only be left with the juice that's been cooked. All these little twigs and things that are still in there, those are going to be going bye-bye. I do like to add a little bit of powdered clove as well. And I do like to add a little bit of cinnamon. You could also add a cinnamon stick in here if you wanted. Totally up to you. It's not going to hurt anything. Now, I'm not big on measurements when it comes to all of these things, so I really do just kind of measure with my heart and my eyes, because you're never going to have the same amount of berries every time unless you're harvesting a really large amount that you're able to kind of break down and do in different ways. I usually end up with about a pot this size, and I think for most people, if you have enough elderberries to even harvest, you're going to end up with, you know, a sauce pot about this size. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my stove here. I've got it up on high to kind of get it rolling. Now, I am going to take my potato masher. I know, don't yell at me because it's metal, but I'm not really scraping the pan. I'm just pushing this down to kind of help juice these berries a little bit, and I will come through and do this several times throughout the cooking process. Once this gets to kind of a slow rolling boil, I'm going to back it off to a simmer, and I'm going to continue to let it cook for a good 30 to 40 minutes. So we're going to let this sit for a little while. Now, while that's heating up, I've got my honey here that I'm going to be adding to it later. I had a jar that was partially crystallized from our local raw honey from Chickasaw Honey, which is Bart, our bee man and friend. He's been in a few of our videos before. In fact, I'll tag a video here of him getting a swarm of bees off of our property here at 3 Mississippi. But when you mix honey and then stir it or whip it, put it in your mixer, however you want to do it, you can get whipped honey. And it becomes thick and this beautiful golden color. And I like to do this because elderberry syrup is very, very runny, okay? It's not a true syrup, it's more of a cordial. It's just kind of liquidy. Adding a thicker whipped honey to it does make it more syrupy. So when you take a teaspoon of it, it's not gonna just slide off your spoon. So I do like to add whipped honey versus regular honey at the end for that very reason, to just make it a little bit thicker and more syrupy. So I walked away for half a second at apparently a very crucial time, and it foamed up and bubbled over. I knew better than to walk away. As you can see over here, I've made a mess, so I had to wait for that to cool down before I can clean it because it's hot. Happens to the best of us, right? Anyway, I've got this almost back up to a simmer. I did add a hair more water. Don't be afraid to add a little bit more water through the cooking process as it kind of evaporates. That is normal, that is fine. I'm gonna let this come back up to where it's just a slow simmer, almost boil. So I just set my timer in there for 30 minutes. It's at a nice little simmer right now. So I thought I would pop out here. Let's see if I can turn this light on, if I can reach it. There we go. So I'm going to show you guys everything in just a minute. Now I am going to show you this a little bit out of order. We shot some of Mike and Frankie working on this new section of wall that you see behind me here, but I haven't posted it yet. So that will actually be coming out next week. So I don't normally like to show you guys projects out of order. However, that's just the way the cards fell this time. It's just how it's going to be. But I did want to show you the progress that they've made and some of the decisions that Mike has decided on as far as the building in the shop. Now it's a little bit messy now because he's been basically working on it after work, and I don't have any footage of that because I was busy doing other things and he did not film it. So it just kind of magically appeared. So you guys may remember this part was actually finished right before Freedom Weekend. He had made this rafter in order to put some of his stuff up top while we hosted a lot of our friends from the YouTube community. So he has since, in the last couple weeks here, he's built this ladder you can see here to get up and down a little bit more easily from to the rafters and back down. And he started to drywall this in. They added this wall together and they did the header up here. He started to lay the flooring up here for this next section of the rafters. It's almost done, but not done yet. And then they finished this section of wall right here. It looks like they still have to run some of the electric, but I don't know if he is actually putting electric on this wall. So maybe he's not, I don't know. I don't imagine he needs any electric on that wall, if we're being honest. But he's decided to drywall at least the outside of this. So as you can see, he's added all of this here, some of the OSB, that's the flooring that's going up there. And you can see in here, it's kind of dark, but I wish they would have filmed some of this because they ended up actually using Kenny, our Kubota tractor, to get the flooring up there, to get up there. They borrowed our neighbor's cherry picker, it's still sitting out here in the front, to get everything up there, the materials up there, and to get themselves up and down before he built the ladder there behind me. So he still, as you can see, it is not finished. It still requires quite a bit of work, but he does have so much of this completed, which is great because once this is completed, he'll be able to finish organizing his tools. As you can see, obviously he's done some of it in this room here, but getting some of the things that he doesn't need as frequently up high is going to be really nice because he'll have more room for his other workbench that he built that's currently sitting back here, and some of his other tools that are kind of like this rack. He'll be able to go through and organize it. They've just been sort of, as they need things, kind of dumping it over there, but they'll have room in here now to free up some floor space and allow this area to be a much better working environment. Again, I'm bummed that none of it got filmed. This was a lot of hours of work in here. Unfortunately, it was just one of those things where I can't be everywhere at once. And so it didn't get filmed, which is a bummer. But you will see some of Mike and Frankie working on the beginnings of this second half of the project over here in the upcoming video next week, I believe. So be on the lookout for that because, as we all know, who doesn't love a good episode of Mike and Frankie's banter when they're building or working on a project? It's always hilarious, and Frankie amazes me every day with how adept she's become at working on these projects and everything that she's learned for only being 14 years old. And she's become such a hard worker. So I'm happy that this project's gotten a little bit further along. Once this is done, we can move back out onto the chicken coop. One of the reasons he started working on this more, well, two reasons, was he does want to free up the shop, make it more usable. There's some things of mine out here that are not as functional for me currently, like my animal supply stuff that's in here, due to the fact that this is kind of jumbled in here a little bit. Once we get this done and we can kind of put a final stamp on this project, and things that need to go up in the rafters that are not used regularly then can be up there and off of the floor down here, opening up this space quite a bit. Be able to drive the truck in here to work on, be able to bring the tractor in here if we need to for something. All of that will free up that space to be able to do that. But once this is done, then we can move back out to the chicken coop, weather permitting. The reason we didn't do that was because we did have some weather come through where we had a lot of heavy rain and winds. So working outside on the coop was not ideal, but working in here during those times just made sense. Sometimes you have to shift gears a little bit when the weather is not cooperating and work on an inside project versus an outside project, so that you're not just sitting, not getting anything done, but at least getting something done. So this is where we're at right now as it stands. And like I said, you'll see the video of them actually working on this side of it in a week or so. I did want to show you guys the progress that has been made with the rafters almost being done up here, and with these walls being partially drywalled now. So lots of progress made. We do have to go into one of the cities at some point, like Tupelo, and get some more supplies, because some of the things that we needed, like the drywall mud, is not carried at our local store. So we do have to make a trip into the city, and we just have not had time to do that. Basically, anytime you're going to drive into the city, it's an hour there, it's an hour back. You're usually spending at least an hour there while you're in the city, and you're going to want to check off some of your other supply run errands while you're there to kind of, it just always feels like the whole day ends up getting eaten. and quite frankly, just haven't had the time to do it. So we will be getting that part done sooner rather than later. For right now, I feel like this has come a long way, so I am excited about that. So it's been going for about 15 minutes now. I just used my masher to mash the berries up again. You can see quite a bit of steam is coming off of it. And it will reduce down a little bit. You can kind of see at the edge there how much it's reduced down. That dark purple line there. So another about 15-20 minutes or so, and I'll go ahead and run it through the sieve. So my timer just went off. It's been cooking for about 35 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead, and I've been, mashing it in between with my handy dandy potato masher to really squish the juice out of those berries. You can see it's a beautiful, beautiful color in there. So we're gonna go ahead and pour this off into the sieve. I spilled a little bit. I usually do this in the sink, but because I was trying to film, I didn't. So I made a bit of a mess here. I'm just gonna push the rest of the juice out here. Get as much out as I can. And then I'm gonna take all my cooked berries here, dump them in a bowl. And I'll be giving these to my birds because they love them. We'll stick that aside. That'll all go out to my flock. As you can see, that pot of berries made just over 2 liters, about 2 1/4 liters, I would say. So now I'm gonna return what I've just processed back to the heat here to cook for another 10 minutes or so. I just like to be super, super, super sure that it's had enough cook time because of it being toxic if it's not cooked. So I'm gonna go ahead and just let this go ahead and cook a little bit longer now that it's been drained. Oh, it got steamy, look at that. See, it's cooked for another 10 minutes and I'm gonna pour it back through the sieve. Try not to spill it because I didn't grab my pot with the lip on it. This is just to make sure that all the little bits are out and it's smooth juice, basically. I see I did get a little bit more. You guys can see I did get another little couple pieces out of there. I'm gonna let this cool for just a few minutes and then we're gonna add our honey. Okay, I've let this cool down for a little while. It's still really, really warm, which is what I want. I just didn't want it like boiling still. And I've got my whipped honey here. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in. And you can add as much or as little honey as you like. I like to kind of eyeball it, but usually somewhere between 1 to 3 cups, depending on how sweet the juice is and all that. And you can taste it now. It's safe to taste at this point if you want to, see if it's sweet enough for you. Get it completely dissolved. Now it's time to get it put into my jars. There you go. So just make sure you're using clean jars, of course. And this will be ready to label once it cools down and to go in the fridge. Again, important to store it in the fridge. Can stay in there for 6 months, so it gets you through kind of your fall colds and your winter flus and things like that. So help keep everybody healthy in the family, and it's really pretty simple to make as long as you don't make a mess on the stove like I did. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I appreciate you. I hope you decide to maybe grow some elderberries this year if you're in a place that they grow nicely, or maybe you're able to get your hands on some, or maybe you have a friend who has elderberries and makes the syrup. You can steal some from them if you ask them nicely. But it's good to have this time of year. I definitely recommend it. It has gotten us through many an illness in the fall and winter months. So thanks for hanging out with me, guys. I appreciate you. And as always, stay blessed and remember, safety's off.